Hey, this is Matt. Welcome back to the channel, Blind to Billionaire. In today's video, I am going to be discussing retinitis pigmentosa, everything about it. What is retinitis pigmentosa? What are some of the symptoms? What is the prognosis? And what is my experience with RP? All right, let's get into it. It's going to be a filled video, but let's get into it. So what is retinitis pigmentosa? I'm going to explain it on a very simple basis. So in our eyes, we have photoreceptors. Photoreceptors, we probably know them as rods and cones. That's what we probably understand photoreceptors as. And with retinitis pigmentosa, what happens is these photoreceptors begin to deplete. What happens is they die off. So these photoreceptors, rod and cone cells in our eyes, are responsible for night vision and peripheral vision and just central vision as a whole. So it's what makes up our vision. Well, what happens is as these photoreceptors slowly die off over time because of retinitis pigmentosa, we, as a result, slowly lose our vision. So RP, typically we lose our peripheral vision first, and then it kind of moves in, and then the central vision eventually depletes as well. So from a very basic standpoint, RP is basically just the depletion of photoreceptor cells in our eyes, the rods and cones, starting typically with the peripheral vision and moving its way in. So that's, like I said, RP on a very simple spectrum. So what are some of the symptoms of retinitis pigmentosa? Now, I can only speak to the symptoms that I have experienced. Now, this is different for everybody, but I think a lot of us can agree that there are some very common symptoms that pretty much all of us experience with RP. So some of the basic or some of the most common symptoms that we experience are definitely tunnel vision. Like I was just saying, RP is, well, it's not defined. I was going to say it's defined. It's not defined, but a characteristic of RP is actual tunnel vision. So meaning we have our peripheral vision, it becomes less and less until we have what essentially looks like we're looking through a tunnel. And then it begins to move in more and more, eventually taking over our central vision. But again, we'll get into that in the prognosis section of this video, but that progression can happen very slowly, or it can happen more rapidly. It just depends on the person. So another symptom, night blindness. I think a lot of us can agree that all of us with RP suffer from night blindness. I can say I have never experienced what it is like to see at night. I've talked about this in other videos. I find that if I'm with a sighted person and we're outside at night and they just walk around like it's daylight, I find it so weird because it's like, how can you see? It's so funny. It's like I'm so impressed always. I've always been impressed, and I continue to be when I'm outside at night and I can't see a thing. I literally cannot see a thing. It's black. And people around me are just walking around like there's nothing going on. Like, oh yeah, it's dark out, but I can see everything. And it's just like, I don't get it, but it's really cool. It always fascinates me when I see that. So tunnel vision and night blindness. Something else that a lot of us also experience is sensitivity to light. So again, this isn't with everybody, but from the people I've talked to, it sounds like this is pretty common. Sensitivity to light. So when we go outside, or even like right now, I'm sitting at a table and there's a light above me, it's actually really bright. I typically don't wear sunglasses inside, but some people feel comfortable that way because our eyes are so sensitive to the bright light. It doesn't even need to be bright. Actually, I'm looking outside at the window right there, and I think it's cloudy today. That's what the weather people say, that it's cloudy today. And even when I look over at the window, it's like, man, it's bright. So yeah, light sensitivity. So typically us with RP, anytime we go outside, we're typically wearing sunglasses, and especially in the sunlight. Man, sunlight, as much as I love the sun and being out in the hot, warm sun, I love it. As much as I love that, I feel like it just fries my eyes. So it's very important to always wear sunglasses when outside. Some of the other not so common symptoms of RP that I have experienced recently, but maybe not everybody has, frequent floaters. So I know that a lot of other people experience floaters too, but I was actually just talking to someone about this last week, and we see like these white or possibly like neon colored floaters that just kind of like float around, possibly like in a pinwheel fashion around our visual field, and they just kind of hang around. And they're not always there, but if they do, they're around for 5, 10, 15 minutes or maybe longer, and then they just kind of disappear. So that is something that I've experienced probably my whole life. These little floaters. I like to call it it looks like a worm to me. It's like this squiggly line. It's actually doing it right now, which is actually kind of weird. So I can actually see it right now kind of spinning around. Another symptom is flashes. Now, I never knew what these flashes were. I heard a lot of people talking about them, and I never really knew what they were because I had never experienced them up until about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And I was doing something, I don't remember what it was, but all of a sudden I saw a flash. And you know how it is when you're somewhere and you catch like a glare of sunlight off of like a glass table or someone's watch or some water or something like that. You see like a flash of light off of it and it catches your eye and you're like, wait, what was that? And you're like, oh, wait, it was just a glare from the sun. Well, I started seeing these and I thought, oh, it's glare. And then I'd kind of look around and be like, well, wait, there's no windows, there's no light. How could that possibly be a glare? And for a while, I didn't really realize, for a while being like, a couple weeks, I was seeing these flashes maybe once a day, once every other day, something like that. And I was thinking, maybe these are the flashes. I don't know. And then because I was realizing like when I would see these flashes, there wasn't something around, like there wasn't a light or sunlight shining anywhere that would allow it to be glare, like a flash of glare off of something. So then I realized maybe it's these flashes that people are talking about. Well, sure enough, it was. So I started, like I said, I started developing these flashes maybe like a year and a half or 2 years ago at the most. And I started seeing them. And what it looks like is it looks like a bright camera flash. It's very fast. It looks like, well, exactly that, a camera flash. It's very bright, white, and it just like flashes, and then that's it. I actually had one about an hour ago, and I only get maybe like one a day, maybe two a day at the most, not even every day of the week, but it just kind of catches you off guard. You're just looking at something, all of a sudden it's like, boom, whoa, that was bright. And it's like, what was that? And it's like, oh wait, it was just a flash, no big deal. So anyway, those are some of the most common symptoms that I have experienced and that I've heard of with people with RP. Now, I'm sure that there's a lot of other symptoms too, but I would say these are probably the most common symptoms with all of us that have RP. All right, let's move on to prognosis. Well, this is kind of a tough question and a little bit loaded at that because we really don't know. RP is different in everybody, literally everybody. There are so many different mutations that cause RP, it's really hard to say what the prognosis is. In some people, they get RP and they're diagnosed and they start seeing symptoms very early in life, like when they're a toddler or possibly very early in life. For me, I was diagnosed at the age of 15, and I've actually ran into other people who have been diagnosed earlier than that, and a few people in their teens just like me. So yeah, I was diagnosed at the age of 15. Now, I've also met people who have been diagnosed in their mid to late 40s or even in their mid to late 30s that they've been diagnosed with RP, and they never really saw any symptoms of RP until later, like I was saying, like in their 30s or possibly even 40s when they were starting to see the effects of it, and then they were diagnosed. So as far as the prognosis goes, it's really hard to say because in some of us, like me, I have probably a more rapidly progressing form of RP. I would say it's not like an aggressive form, but I would say it's probably more kind of in the middle. It's not slow, but it's not aggressive either. It's kind of right in the middle because I was diagnosed at 15. Well, I'll actually get into this in a little while, but I was diagnosed at 15 and my vision was pretty good until I was about 26 or 27, and then it started to get bad pretty fast. So I would say that I have kind of like that mild form. But really, I would say there's really no defined or definite way to say that there's like a one-size-fits-all prognosis for anyone that has RP because it progresses differently for everybody. In some of us that have it earlier in life, the likelihood of probably losing all of our vision is probably higher than somebody that was diagnosed and didn't see any effects until they were in their mid or late 40s or even in their 30s. So it's just really hard to say. So sorry for the really vague answer about the prognosis, but that's just the facts. We're still learning. We really don't know yet. Okay, So getting on to my story with RP, I'll try to make this somewhat clear and concise and kind of get to the point. But anyway, as you already know, I said I was diagnosed at the age of 15 with RP. And like I said, I lived a pretty normal life until I was about 26 or 27. By normal, I mean like I was independent. I could do things as far as like I could read text, I could read books, I could read text messages. I could go into a store independently, walk in by myself, grab a few items, whatever I needed, make my way through the checkout, and make my way back out of the store totally fine. There were probably some instances where I'd walk into the store, those annoying yellow wet floor signs would be in the middle of the floor. I'd kick it, it'd make a huge racket, make a big scene, embarrass myself. That happened all the time. It still happens, actually. Well, now I actually have more of an excuse because I actually really don't see them. Back then I could actually see them, but they kind of like blended in with the floor. And I wouldn't see them until it was too late. But anyway, I did drive for a little while. I got my license when I was 18. I drove for about 3 years, and then I gave up driving just because it was way too dangerous. I shouldn't have been driving. Well, I mean, I was able to drive, but I just didn't feel comfortable driving anymore. So what led me to think, actually, let me get back to some of the other limitations that I had when I said I had some of a normal life. Some of the limitations I had was I was not able to participate in sports. For example, let's say I was at school and we were playing some kind of game during one of our Phy-Ed classes. Do they even call that anymore? Do they call it Phy-Ed? Whatever. I don't know. Whatever. Let's just say one of the classes where you go outside and throw a ball around. I participated, but I did everything I possibly could to avoid the ball. The reason is I couldn't see it. If someone threw it to me, there's a pretty high likelihood that I wouldn't see it. And then there I am standing there, and someone threw a perfect pass to me, and then I can't see the ball, and it just like falls down on the ground, and then the opposing team gets it. So some of the limitations like that. Otherwise, if I was outside playing catch, maybe with a baseball, a tennis ball, a frisbee, something like that, a football with my dad or my brother, or maybe a friend, if they threw it to me, maybe 80% of the time I would see the ball. The other 20-ish% of the time, I wouldn't see it at all. Like, I could see them wind up with their arm and throw it, and then it's like, oh, okay, great. I don't know where the ball is. Can't see it. And then I would duck and cover, waiting for impact. And luckily, I didn't get hit all that many times, but it was a little bit alarming, like, why can't I see the ball? So let's get back into what were some of the early symptoms that I experienced as far as kind of identifying how did I know that something was wrong? Like I said, I was diagnosed at 15. In my early teens, we started noticing that something wasn't right. And when I say we, I mean mostly my parents and me, my brother. The four of us kind of all together noticed like, hey, something isn't right with this guy. And I would say like the best way we describe that is we'd be at home. I would drop something on the floor. It didn't matter what it was. It could be a quarter, a coin of some kind. It could be a pen. It didn't matter. I would drop something on the floor and I would look down at the ground and I wouldn't see it. I would just stare at the ground and look for it and be like, okay, I know it's there. Where is it? And I can't see it. So then it was like, this is weird. Sometimes it would take me a few seconds to find it, and sometimes it would take me minutes to find it, or I wouldn't find it at all. I would ask someone else to get it for me. And then we also started noticing like my parents and my brother, they would drop something and they would look down, and all in one motion, they would look down at the floor and bend over and pick it up. And it's like, how'd you do that? I didn't get it. Or we would be outside. Again, another example. We'd be outside. An airplane flies over. You can hear it flying over, right? Because they're loud. You can hear it flying over. You look up at the sky. My parents, my brother, they look up and they see the airplane immediately. I look up in the sky and I think, okay, I hear it. I know it's there. Everyone else is looking at it. I don't see it. And then sometimes my dad would even quiz me because I was younger and I didn't know what was going on. So he'd be, I would say, he'd be like, do you see the plane? I'd be like, yeah, I see it. He's like, what color tail does it have? And I'd be like, red. And he's like, nope, blue. And it's like, crap. Because that was like his way of testing, did I actually see it? Well, back in the day, that's when Northwest Airlines was around, so they had red tails. So I just knew like I had a pretty good shot of guessing. Actually, did they have red tails? I think it did. Anyway, I don't know. It's not about airlines. But anyway, So that was kind of my dad's way of guessing and kind of testing me, like, did he actually see it or not? And I would see it sometimes, and sometimes I wouldn't. I didn't know what to say, so I would just lie and be like, yeah, I see it. And then it was a dead giveaway when I couldn't identify the color. So those are some of the early symptoms that we noticed that something wasn't right. Now, something else that I did back in the day that I never realized until just a few years ago why I did it. So one of the rules around our house was, my brother and I, the rules were, if we went out to hang out with a friend or we went over to a friend's house or whatever we did, we always had to leave a note. This was before cell phones were a thing. So we had to handwrite a note and leave it on the counter and just say, hey, went over to Alex's house. Whatever. Alex lived across the street. So when I wrote notes, what I would do is I would write it in pen, but then I would write over and over and over the same words and make it like I would write over the same words numerous times to make it really bold. And I never knew why I did that. And again, my dad, he's funny, but again, my dad would be like, we can see it. You don't need to like write over it 1,000 times. And I didn't know why I did that, but I did it. And the reason why is because I found later in life that I could see things that were bold. And again, I didn't know why I was doing this when I was younger, but it was my way of making it so that I could see it. Because if I wrote it just one time with the pen, I couldn't see it all that well. And then I thought, if I can't see it, clearly nobody else can see it, right? So then I would go over and over and make it really bold, and then I could see it. And I thought, okay, if I can see it now. So that means other people must be able to see my note now. And I did that for many years. And like I said, I never realized why I did that until just a few years ago. I was thinking about it and I thought, oh, it makes perfect sense now because I can see things that were bold. Well, I can't see things that are bold anymore, but back when I could still see things, the best situation for me was like 12-point font that was bold. 12-point bold font was the best for me. Kind of small and compact and bold. And then I realized that's why I was doing the bold thing. So these were some of the early symptoms that I was experiencing before the diagnosis of RP. And of course, like I talked about earlier, night blindness. I've never been able to see in the dark. So when I was younger, my dad, brother, and I, the three of us, we used to go on an annual camping trip up in northern Minnesota near the Canadian border. We would go up there every fall, just on a camping trip, the three of us with a few other people. And there was a lot of, we were out in the woods, the middle of nowhere, and there was a lot of darkness. So, we'd be sitting around the fire at night or whatever. And if, let's say we had to get up and walk over to the wood line for a reason, everybody else would get up and walk away like nothing. And I'd step 2 feet away from the fire. The fire illuminates the area pretty well. I'd step 2 feet away from the fire and be like, I can't see. Like, I can't see anything. How are you guys doing this? I never understood how people could see in the dark. Or when I was a little bit older, when I'd play with my friends, like night games at night around the neighborhood, or even a better example, going out trick-or-treating on Halloween. I don't know how kids ever did. It was so confusing to me how people could just navigate the streets and the sidewalks and the driveways and all of these houses like it was daylight, and here I am struggling, tripping on every step along the way, the curbs, bumping into people, and it's like, I can't see a thing. There'd be a car parked in a driveway, and I'd walk right into it, like it wasn't even there. So let's fast forward to the actual diagnosis. How did it work? I was actually seen by numerous different ophthalmologists, and all of them basically gave me the same answer. Well, son, you just need glasses. It's just a matter of getting you some glasses. So we tried out some glasses. We found out, nope, glasses don't help. In fact, they don't do anything. I didn't need glasses. My acuity at the time was actually pretty good. I think it was 20/40. Yeah, it was 20/40. So, that's pretty good. And it maintained that way for a long time, many years. I didn't need glasses. That was not the issue. So we tried glasses, we tried contacts, and nobody could figure it out. Like, what's the deal? Like, why can't I see different things? And eventually I found one ophthalmologist. We went in, and he dilated my eyes just like everybody else did. And he looked in there, and my parents were in the room, and he said, I see something in Matt's eyes. I'm not sure what it is, but I know it's not right. And I know there's something wrong here, but I don't know what it is. I'm going to refer you to a retina specialist. So we finally thought, okay, great. Because at the time, I mean, honestly, we didn't know. I was in my teens, mid-teens. My parents didn't know. This was all new to us. We didn't know what to do. So anyway, he referred us to a retina specialist here in Minnesota at Phillips Eye Institute in Plymouth. It's a pretty well-known eye institute here in the state of Minnesota. So anyway, I went there and I met with a doctor, and they ran a series of tests, hours and hours of testing. For any of you with RP, you've probably gone through these same testing. Honestly, I don't really recall what all of them were, but I just know we were there for a long time. And after all of that, we were called into the room with the doc, and he said, "Hey, okay, well, I've gone through the results here of all your testing, and what I see from all of the results is characteristic with something that we call retinitis pigmentosa." And that was the first time we'd ever heard that word and those words, retinitis pigmentosa, and we were like, first of all, I was 15. It was actually on my 15th birthday, and I was just thinking, say what? Is that even English? And so I don't know what my parents were thinking, but I'm pretty sure they were thinking kind of the same thing, like, excuse me, can you spell that to us? Because we don't even know what that is. So anyway, he basically said, there's no cure for this, and you will likely lose all of your vision at some point in your life. Well, being at the age of 15, that was really alarming to me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what that meant. Again, I was 15. I was ignorant. I didn't really know. At the same time, like I said, I was ignorant. And then as I fast forwarded through my life, I just thought, it'll never happen to me. As I got older into my late teens, I thought my vision's still pretty good. I can still do most things. That'll never happen. Well, like I said, my vision was pretty good until I was about 26, 27, something like that, where I would say I was mostly independent up until that age. And then from 27-ish until present, I would say that my vision has declined somewhat rapidly to the point where I feel like I have light perception now. So like I was saying earlier, I have light perception. I actually just looked up at the light and my eyes hurt now. Anyway, there's a light above me. It's bright light. I can see it. If I look to my right, there's a window over there. I can see that there is bright light outside. Other than that, I literally cannot see anything else. Well, I shouldn't say I can't see anything else. Okay, so there's a table here underneath the light. I can see a glare off the table. I cannot see the phone. Like, I'm recording this with my iPhone. I cannot see the phone, but what I do before I start recording is I kind of get set up right in front of it, and I get a central direction of where to look. And as long as I don't look away or like move too much, I have an idea of where to look. I actually think I might be looking a little bit high based on that. Sometimes there's a little bit of glare off the top of the phone, which I can actually see the glare, and I know if I just look a little below that glare, that's where I should look. Actually, now I'm kind of freaking out because I'm trying to look for the camera and I don't see it. So anyway, it's out there somewhere. But what else can I share with you? So that is mostly my experience with RP. And getting back to like light perception, I can't see color anymore. When I was younger, like up until, I would say everything up until 26 or 27, I could see color. I still know what colors look like. And now I don't see color at all. If I hold up a white and black shirt next to each other, which I actually just did that a little while ago, if I hold them side by side next to each other, I can't tell you the colors of the two items, but I can identify that one is bright and one is dark. That's about all I can see, is that there's contrast between the two, and I can see that the contrast is one is brighter, one is darker. Other than that, one could be gray and one could be blue, and I wouldn't know the difference. But anyway, those are some of my experiences, and that is retinitis pigmentosa summed up in, I don't know, however many minutes this was. But anyway, hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions or any comments of any kind, feel free to stick those down below, and I love connecting with all of you. If you're new here on the channel, I'd love it if you subscribe, and hopefully this video provided some value and just gave you some perspective into kind of the progression of retinitis pigmentosa, kind of the progression through my life, some of the symptoms, the prognosis, and just a really brief rudimentary explanation of what retinitis pigmentosa is and just how it affects us. So anyway, like I said, any comments or questions, stick those down below. Otherwise, I will see you again on another video on Friday. Thanks again for watching this. I really appreciate all your support, and hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Thanks again. See you soon. All right, bye now.